Ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls listening from all around the world, I present to you number 42, Barry Church.
Oh, yes, how sweet it is. Barry, it's been too long, my friend. How the heck you doing, sir?
Man, I'm doing amazing, man. About to be a new year here, man. Thanks for having me on the show. I done heard the intro now, man, so everything's golden, baby.
So, Barry, last night, Brian and I are hosting the postgame show, and I got to open with this, and you know, having played in the league, how difficult it is just to win games in the NFL. And I know your former teammate Anthony Hitchens went ahead and he commented on something that I put out there on Twitter as well, but it seems like this Cowboys fan base is just a little bit frustrated, where winning is just not enough anymore in the regular season. Are you getting and feeling that same sense with what you're doing at DallasCowboys.com, where even though what they've done now, back-to-back 12-win seasons, and that's pretty historic, they haven't done that since the 90s, but it's not enough. It's playoffs or bust now.
Yeah, I can understand, the frustration, from Cowboys fans out there because it's frustrating. I mean, when you have a team as talented as the Dallas Cowboys is, you hate to see them sleepwalk into a game. And, I don't want to call it sleepwalking because, like you said, it's hard enough to go out there and win a game on any given Sunday. We've seen that the past couple weeks. But when you go out there and you're playing in December, we all know December football, you got to be hitting your best football in December because you're going towards the playoffs. You don't want to limp into the playoffs. And what we've seen so far from the Cowboys is this team is extremely talented. I think they have one of the best rosters in the National Football League, but it's just too inconsistent. You go from one game where you look like world beaters against the Minnesota Vikings, and then you come back, you follow that up with a game against, the Houston Texans, and they have this two-quarterback system, and they take you all the way to the wire. Even this game last night, they won by, I think, 2 scores, but right. If you look at it, I mean, that Tennessee Titans team was without, I think, 4 or 5 of its defensive starters. You're out their 2 best players, which is Jeffrey Simmons and Derrick Henry. I mean, those are the type of games where you're saying, all right, if we're going to play our starters out there, we got to go in there and make sure this game is over by halftime. So, a win is a win, and you'll never see me complain about a win. But, I mean, you got to get more consistent because you're not going to be going against the Tennessee Titans of the world, the Houston Texans of the world. When you get to the playoffs, you're going to be going against teams that'll make you pay for turning the football over. So, to me, they got to get on the right direction. A win is a win. They're 12-4, back-to-back 12-win seasons, which is a heck of an accomplishment. But you don't want to limp into the playoffs. You want to be having your best foot forward when you're going into the playoffs, and I haven't seen that yet from the Cowboys.
So what would the talking point then be for you in that locker room, having been a former captain of that defense specifically after a game like that?
Well, from a defensive standpoint, you got to understand that, like I mentioned earlier, how we should not even be in a close game with this team. And I understand, defense, they were able to take the football away, and, they got a little bit of pass rush. They're still not, where they were at earlier in the season. But I feel like the defense, it played one of its better games these past couple weeks. But offensively, I mean, being an offensive captain, you got to look out there and you got to say, guys, we got to stop these turnovers. Whether it's, Dak's fault or not, I mean, I know that first interception was nowhere near his fault. Peyton Hendershot has got to come down with that. But regardless, the turnovers happen. And they understand, Dak, he's been in this league long enough. He understands that turnovers aren't going to win you the football game. You got to be consistent in taking care of the football. And I think they got enough leadership on that team to understand that. So hopefully in this last game, if they play their starters, they'll be able to go out there and at least rectify that going into the playoffs. Because I'm telling you, you match up against, Tom Brady or maybe even a San Francisco or a Philadelphia team, they're going to make you pay for turning the football over. I mean, look, they went against Josh Dobbs last night, and this is a guy that was signed off the practice squad 8 days ago, and he went, he completed 20 passes. It should have been more with all the drops they had out there. So it's got to be a little concerning, but I got to trust in this coaching staff. They were able to get the most out of their players so far this season, so hopefully they got a solution to what's going on with this team.
Barry, when you look at this football team, and I'm talking about, you look at the Cowboys, say, offensively, because you were a former defensive player. What's the first thing that you would try and take away from this Cowboys offense? Because since Dak Prescott has come back, they've really been humming in the red zone. They've done a really nice job with their third down efficiency stuff. at times they've run the ball. What would you try and take away first if you were playing the Dallas Cowboys on defense?
Well, if it was, middle of the season, I would say, hey, man, we have got to lock down this run game. Tony Pollard, Ezekiel Elliott, the offense goes through those guys. So I would, if it was middle of the season or these last couple games, I'd say we got to stop the run. But, since about, week 11, I feel like 88 has been that guy. Whether they line him up on the outside, line him up in the slot, line him up in a bunch, this guy seems unguardable out there. So to me as a defender, I'm looking at that offense saying, hey, man, if we shut down 88, if we get a hold of 88, double team them, whatever they got to do, and make the other guys, Gallup, Noah Brown, T.Y. Hilton, those guys beat us, we'll be all right. Because I feel like, what they're doing with CeeDee Lamb right now, moving them around, having them all over the place, it's getting hard for defensive backs and defenses to game plan and get their hands on this guy because they have him in so many different spots and are able to get him the ball in so many different spots. And once he has that ball in his hands, he's extremely dangerous. So if I'm going against, the Dallas Cowboys and Dak Prescott, I'm without a doubt making sure I got a hold of 88 out there before anything because he's been proven to be a game buster these past couple weeks.
Barry, how hard is it to double a receiver that plays on the move when they move him around? How do you go about? Is that going to be the Cowboys' answer going forward, is just keep him on the move, or are there ways or tricks of the trade that you could do in your secondary to kind of double him up?
Well, they're doing the right thing right now, keeping him on the move. You don't know where he's going to line up, outside, slot, all that good stuff. Because if he was just an outside receiver, like if he was just, A.J. Brown out there, it would be pretty easy to double team him because you would have a corner up top getting all up in his grill, and then you would have safety help over top. But the way they move him around, it gets difficult because you got to double team him with different people. So if he's in the slot, you got your nickel there, and you might want to double team him with a safety over top. Or if he's on the inside, you might want to have a linebacker banging him and helping him with that nickel on third and short situations where they like to pass it and get him the ball. So the way they're moving him around, it's extremely hard to double team him, but there's definitely ways that you can do that, whether you're, double teaming him with a safety in the slot, a slot corner and the linebacker, or safety in the outside corner. There's ways to double team him, but Kellen Moore is doing a heck of a job of trying to hide CeeDee Lamb and getting the most out of his ability on the field.
It's Barry Church with us here in the GBag Nation on a Victory Friday for the Dallas Cowboys. Now, Barry, when it comes to this Cowboys secondary and all the moving parts and the injuries they've dealt with, how long does that take to get reacclimated or to acclimate if you're a corner stepping in, and from a communication standpoint?
Well, it's extremely hard. And DaRon Bland, he's making it look extremely easy out there. Getting 5 interceptions as a rookie, playing inside. One of the hardest positions, in my opinion, is the nickelback. And he's been able to come in here as a rookie and play outstanding. So he kind of makes it look easy. But as you see, young guys coming into the game, Nashawn Wright, Kelvin Joseph out there, it's kind of hard to kind of hit the ground running as a corner at that position. You're going against some of the top athletes in the National Football League, and it's hard to cover those guys. So it's definitely tough as a safety to make sure everybody's on the same page, because you like to have guys with experience out there to say, all right, I just got to give you a hand signal and you understand what's going on. But with these young rookies out there, you got to have a little bit more patience with them. Even though I liked what I seen from Wright last night, he got beat on that one big play. But other than that, I liked what I saw from him as far as his press technique and using those long arms to kind of keep the wide receivers at bay. And he was able to get his first career interception out there using, every inch of his length out there. But I've liked what I've seen so far, and he's definitely an upgrade from what we had over there previously.
Barry, are you concerned at all about the lack of pass rush that the Cowboys have had the last few games? Now, it came back a little bit last night, but it certainly is not the ferocious beast that it was the first half of the season.
Yeah, it's slightly concerning, only because, like we all mentioned, that secondary is young. And it makes the job a lot easier of a guy in the secondary if that defensive line can get home, rep after rep. But as you mentioned, these past couple weeks, they haven't really been able to get to the quarterback. I think it's been, maybe 3 sacks in the past 4 weeks, something like that. But they haven't been able to get home like they were earlier in the year. And I don't know what that could be attributed to. I don't know if the guys aren't winning their one-on-ones out there or whatever the case may be. But this defense needs that pass rush to get going again. It needs to get coming alive, especially with the injuries in the secondary. It'll make things a lot easier if that quarterback has to get rid of the ball extremely fast or before he's ready to, especially with the young secondary that they have.
Yeah, Barry, we had Tank on the other day, and I'm just watching the All-22. and they're getting into their twist game, and they're not getting home because the ball's already out. How do you okay, now is that a secondary adjustment to try and help? Because they need that extra, the extra half second or whatever to try and get that twist home. Is there something you could do in the secondary? Is it more press? How do you help your defensive line in that way?
Yeah, well, we all know, rush and cover works together, and I feel as though I'm not so sure, Dan Quinn has, the utmost confidence in these young guys, because we've seen this defense play a lot more zone than it has earlier in the season. So I'm not sure if it's a confidence issue or whatever the case may be. But to get that quarterback to hold the ball a little bit longer, you got to go in there and you got to get in their face. You got to press these wide receivers out there. You got to throw that timing off between the wide receivers and the quarterback over there to give your defensive line an extra tick, an extra second to get home. So, I don't know if it's, the lack of confidence that he has or whatever the case may be, but they haven't been playing a lot of man-to-man as of recent, and I think that might be the woes because like you said, these quarterbacks are getting the ball out of their hand extremely fast, and it's hard for that defensive line to get home when the ball's out in, 2.5 seconds.
So, 42, you've played in your fair share of playoff games, made a conference championship run there in Jacksonville. With the Cowboys now, it all depends on what happens with the Eagles, but let's say the Eagles win over the Saints, and now they're NFC's champs, and the Cowboys know they're locked into the 5 seed. Where are you at with the rest versus, all right, let's play and make sure we're playing our best football? Because selfishly, I kind of need Micah Parsons to get 3 sacks against Washington. I got to shave my bleeping beard, Barry.
You got to have him get 3 sacks out there?
I need 3 sacks. I had an over-under at 15.5 with Bobby Bell. Loser has to shave their beard, and he's sitting at 13.
Oh, well, that's going to be tough. But to me, I've never been a fan of the resting your players. I just feel like it kind of throws momentum off. But, with the Cowboys dealing with the injuries that they've had, especially along that offensive line, I could definitely see them resting some guys if that last game really doesn't matter and Philly goes up there and wins and locks up the NFC East. So I can definitely see them resting them guys. But, me, I've never been a fan of it. I like, having that momentum going into the playoffs. I don't like limping into the playoffs. And the last time we saw the Cowboys, they got the dub. Like I said, they got the dub against Tennessee, but it really wasn't, it wasn't the dub that we all kind of anticipated. So to me, I'd like to see the starters play maybe a half. They don't got to play the whole game if it really doesn't mean anything. But with this injury situation that they have going on over there, I can see them sitting their starters.
Will Barry Church make it to midnight for New Year's?
Ooh, that's a tough one, man. The over-under right now is 11:50. I don't know if I'm going to make it, man. We'll see what the night comes.
We appreciate the time as always, Barry. Thank you. Happy New Year to you, and we'll catch up with you down the line.
Thanks for having me, man. Happy New Year for you guys as well.